It is not true that good can follow only from good and evil only from evil, but that often the opposite is true. Anyone who fails to see this is, indeed, a political infant. Specialists without spirit, sensualists without heart, this nullity imagines that it has attained a level of civilization never before achieved. The fate of our times is characterized by rationalization and intellectualization and, above all, by the disenchantment of the world. In a democracy, the people choose a leader in whom they trust. Then the chosen leader says, "Now shut up and obey me." People and party are then no longer free to interfere in his business. Calvinist believers were psychologically isolated. Their distance from God could only be precariously bridged, and their inner tensions only partially relieved by unstinting, purposeful labor. It's the intellectual who transforms the concept of the world into the problem of meaning. Spirit of capitalism is best understood as part of the development of rationalism as a whole. The ultimately possible attitudes toward life are irreconcilable, and hence their struggle can never be brought to a final conclusion. Remember that money is of the prolific, generating nature. Money can beget money, and its offspring can beget more, and so on. No sociologist, for instance, should think himself too good, even in his old age, to make tens of thousands of quite trivial computations in his head, and perhaps for months at a time. The purely emotional form of pietism is, as Ritschl has pointed out, a religious dilettantism for the leisure class. As intellectualism suppresses belief in magic, the world's processes become disenchanted, lose the magical significance, and henceforth simply are and happen, but no longer signify anything. Whenever the man of science introduces his personal value, judgment, a full understanding of the facts ceases. The process of sanctifying life could thus almost take on the character of a business enterprise. The intellect, like all cultural values, has created an aristocracy based on the possession of rational culture, and independent of all personal, ethical qualities of man. The aristocracy of intellect is hence an unbrotherly aristocracy. Beware of thinking all your own that you possess, and of living accordingly. It is a mistake that many people who have credit fall into. A state is a human community that successfully claims the monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force within a given territory. For bourgeois classes as such have seldom before and never since displayed heroism. It was the last of our heroisms, as Carlyle, not without reason, has said. The radical elimination of magic from the world allowed no other psychological course than the practice of worldly asceticism, since its entry on the scene was not generally peaceful. A flood of mistrust, sometimes of hatred, above all of moral indignation, regularly opposed itself to the first innovator. In Baxter's view, the care for external goods should only lie on the shoulders of the saint, like a light cloak, which can be thrown aside at any moment. 114 But fate decreed that the cloak should become an iron cage. Work hard in your calling. The final result of political action, often, no regularly, stands in completely inadequate and often even paradoxical relation to its original meaning. After industry and frugality, nothing contributes more to the raising of a young man in the world than punctuality and justice in all his dealings. He must be stilled in order to create that deep repose of the soul in which alone the word of God can be heard, of impulsive enjoyment of life, which leads away both from work in a calling and from religion, was as such the enemy of rational asceticism, whether in the form of seigneurial sports, or the enjoyment of the dance hall, or the public house of the common man. What kind of a man must one be if he is allowed to put his hand on the wheel of history? Material goods have gained an increasing and finally inexorable power over the lives of men as, at no previous period in history, that in East Prussia Frederick William I tolerated the Mennonites as indispensable to industry. Because death is meaningless, civilized life as such is meaningless. But the person who can do this must be a leader. Not only that, he must, in a very simple sense of the word, be a hero. It is certain that there can be no work in political economy on any other than an altruistic basis. If our work is to retain any meaning, it can only be informed by this concern for the future, for those who will come after us. In practice, this means that God helps those who help themselves. Thus, one may attain salvation in any walk of life on rational conduct on the basis of the idea of calling was born from the spirit of Christian asceticism. Weber argues that personal bias should not preclude the scientific ascertainment of objective historical facts. Weber's achievement was not to definitively answer a riddle but to stake out a territory fertile of new puzzles, at the heart of which is the claim that religious forces, not simply economic ones, paved the way for the mentality characteristic of modern Western capitalism. Calvinism, in comparison, appears to be more closely related to the hard legalism and the active enterprise of bourgeois capitalistic entrepreneurs. Finally, the numerous gods of yore, divested of their magic and hence assuming the shape of impersonal forces, arise from their graves, strive for power over our lives, and resume their eternal struggle among themselves. The earning of money within the modern economic order is, so long as it is done legally, the result and the expression of virtue and proficiency in a calling, and this virtue and proficiency are, as it is now, not difficult to see. But at least one thing was unquestionably new: the valuation of the fulfillment of duty in worldly affairs as the highest form which the moral activity of the individual could assume. This, an attitude of moral indifference, has no connection with scientific objectivity. Bear in mind that the value of a human being does not depend on whether he has leadership qualities,